Welcome to the InfoMullet YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content, please like or share. And if you'd like to support the InfoMullet by becoming a mulleteer, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. From ceasefire and calm resolutions of ethnic conflict to the U.S. presidential election. How's that for a segue? So, want to check back in. I made some forecasts on the election, both what the 2 weeks after the election would be, and when I did the fuck it, we're doing a live episode the day after the election, I made some forecasts. So let's check back in. First of all, I predicted there would be no mass violence or instability in the 2 weeks following election. I said we might not know the night of who won, but we'd probably know by Friday or Saturday. I predicted it would probably be in the range of 290 to 306 for Biden. This is the revised estimate. My early estimates are way off, but when you revise estimates after the election, you can get a lot closer. And that there would be lawsuits and recounts and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, Biden would be president. So here we are. Not quite, a little bit after 2 weeks, depending on when you want to call that the election actually, like, it's hard to tell, was the election November 3rd or was it all the way through that first week? But we've got a pretty good feeling now. The Electoral College has landed for 306 for Biden. As I suggested, he appears to have taken Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, all for Biden. And the recounts are underway. The hand recount of Georgia's probably going to be called anytime now. That doesn't look like that's going to change. That's the only one that's really close. Pennsylvania, he's ahead by 100,000. Wisconsin, he's ahead by 20,000. But in Wisconsin, when they do a recount, they only end up changing a few hundred votes. I think Wisconsin has presented a bill to Trump for $7.9 million, saying if you want to recount Wisconsin, sign this check. And once it doesn't bounce, we'll go ahead and do that. I'm waiting to see if he even goes ahead and pays that money or just avoids it. Michigan yesterday, there was a slight kerfuffle with Wayne County. County election commissioners didn't want to certify the results of the county for no reason other than intransigence and petulance, temper tantrum. They thought better of it. 2 hours later, unanimous certification of the results. So Michigan's going for Biden. All these lawsuits and things like that, they're winding their way through. Legal Eagle has some great coverage on this. There's a link in the link sources to Legal Eagle to go through the lawsuits in detail. And I actually am okay with the lawsuits. The lawsuits are the way that you test claims, right? You let people make all these claims and you test them out and you put them through the court of law and you find out what the answer is based on the evidence. And the answer is a lot of this is you have no evidence, even the ones that are valid. And there's some that are merit. The remedy that, when you have a person in Nevada was denied a ballot because it was there was on the records that she had already voted by absentee. She was offered a provisional ballot, which is the right procedure. If there's a dispute, the election officials hand your provisional and say, fill out the provisional. When we go through it, if you're right, we'll use the provisional. She refused that, then took Nevada to court and sued. Well, even if that case had gone further than it did, because it fell apart because there was no evidence. I mean, she didn't provide any evidence. She said it was a renter who took the thing. But let's say it went through and it had merit. These things happen on the margin. The remedy for that case is one vote. The remedy for a case involving one person is not to throw out hundreds of thousands of votes. And that's the sort of the writing on the wall. If you look into these lawsuits, there is no lawsuit, even the ones still going on, where the remedy is going to be a difference that's going to make a change in a flip of a state. So I think these ones, there's a few left, but generally lawyers are jumping ship. The law firms are jumping ship. They're tired of working with Trump. They're tired of being under pressure. They're probably wondering if they're going to get paid. These things will work it well out. What's my mental model? Everyone's asking, well, is Trump doing these lawsuits and are the states going to overturn the elections and with this elector competitor? Is there going to be a coup? There's a lot of concern on that. I'm not too worried about that. My mental model is that this is Trump University back in session. And what I mean by Trump University is Trump promises over-the-top expectations. Your wildest dreams come true. Just give me money, spend 2 weeks of effort, and then it will all be better. And that was Trump University. It turns out it was a con. It was a fraud. And that's what I think is going on now. Trump is pushing this narrative to generate fundraising. And there's links in the thing that show how this fundraising occurs. Some of the things that people are donating to that are titled recount effort by law can't go to recounts. you're basically giving money for recounts for something that by law cannot go to a recount activity. What it can go to is paying down campaign debts or future campaigning activity. Now, some donations are going to areas where maybe it's 60% can go to the recount, but it's still within the control of the campaign. And I think what's going on is not some effort to steal the election. The delays of transition are concerning. That's not a good move. But when it comes to who's going to be president, Biden's going to be president. I'm saying it right now. And Trump knows it. He's admitted it in a press conference. He tweeted it by accident Sunday morning. But he's maintaining this so he can generate fundraising so he gets to pay down his campaign debts and build a little bit of a war chest. Now, I mentioned the transition is being blocked. That has serious consequences. One of my frustrations is I'll yield. Hey, let the lawsuits go, let the recounts go, but start the transition process. And this is federal law. There's a law about when transitions start and when they have to go through, and it's not based on any one politician's determination here. It shouldn't be based on, well, is the politician conceded yet? That's ludicrous. We're a republic. We don't rely on politicians to do things. We do things according to the Constitution. And in this case, a transition is not the when you begin transition assistance, that doesn't say who won. The Electoral College will do that. What it does is say, if it's close, we treat it like both are going to be president, and we make sure they're both prepared to execute the duties of the office, especially when it comes to national security from day one, which means that they needed to have started 2 weeks ago in this, because you hear about intelligence briefings and getting national security clearances, and people tend to think, well, Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, and President-elect Biden, they're thinking like a few people. I've worked on one of these transitions before. There are literally 1,800 positions you need to fill, several hundred of which, and these are political appointees, several hundred of which are related to national security. And then there's entire teams and staffs that are not political appointees that are part of national security apparatus that you need to get classification coverage for. You need to start organizing. They need to understand the issues, the problems. And it's in this situation, it's not just national security. It's also the COVID-19 response. We've got this pandemic going on. I just spent the first half of the video doing that. And you have the upcoming vaccine distribution, the logistics, all of those things should be being coordinated as if either would be president. I'll yield that Trump hasn't conceded yet. That's fine. I don't care. We don't have to wait for him to concede to do the right thing by the country. I said the same thing in go back to Bush versus Gore, you go back to Clinton and Trump the first time. You begin the transition as if both have won, if it's close, as if both had won, because you don't want to delay this too long. And I get frustrated because my mental model isn't Trump's going to do a coup. It's that we're back at Trump University and this is a con job to get money for fundraising. So here's the questions. Wisconsin sent a $3 million bill for only a couple of counties. Ed's asking, not counting Rudy getting embarrassed in federal court, asking for votes to be thrown out over claims that aren't even in the suit. Yeah, there's this is you look at Mulvaney, Trump's former chief of staff, diehard Trumper, conservative, right? He's at CPAC right now. He's asking, if these are election lawsuits, why is Giuliani prosecuting them? Giuliani's not an election attorney. He's barely a competent attorney. The guy is standing in front of doing his press conferences and things. He's more like a reality TV star. And Mulvaney literally says, this isn't television. If this were real and not a fundraising activity, you would have competent legal representation, of which there is plenty. The Republicans, when it comes to gerrymandering and suppressing the vote, Republicans have AAA legal representation. They know where to find lawyers who know that law. But that's not who you're seeing in these cases. You're seeing people who literally, there's a case that Legal Eagle put up where the judge asks, are there Republican observers in Pennsylvania? And the lawyer says there is a non-zero amount in the room. And the judge pauses, and then the judge asks, as a member of the bar in front of this court, are you telling me how many members of the Trump campaign? And then he said, there are members. And the judge says, so what's your problem? I mean, this is the complete lack of evidence on these things. The lawyers know it's not true. It's just embarrassing that they're running. There's filing errors, there's spelling errors, there's late filing. All of these things are showing that the A team that the Republicans have from a legal side are not involved. Doesn't GSA provide transition funding to candidates prior to election? Mitt Romney even had an office and resources provided by the. So Rory's asking about the GSA transition. So quick segue into presidential transition. Might even do a special on this one time, but because I love this stuff. This is policy stuff I was involved in. The presidential transition actually starts months ago, and there's a series of phases. There's something called the Federal Presidential Transition Commission. It is a bipartisan commission set up by Congress and approved by presidential, they passed a law, they did it. And this commission's design is to create a neutral transition expertise, because these things are incredibly complicated. And it goes through a series of phase gates. And the phase gates include everything from, getting Secret Service protection to initial support and things like that. And it starts, gosh, I want to say like 6 months prior to the election, with who is your transition authority for the campaign. You start working with these groups, but a very critical phase gate happens after the election. Once the election happens, it's not just that GSA can release funds in office space. If it were only funds in office space, I'd tell Biden to suck it up and do that. But it's the ability to legally talk with agency civil servants. And I'm not talking to the political appointees. There's the expert agency staff in every single federal agency. Normally what happens when the GSA clicks that button, Biden's people are allowed to say, hey, you're putting a budget together for fiscal year 2022, and it's got to be submitted in February. We get sworn in January 21st, 22nd. We'd like to talk to you about that budget because we need to know what you're planning. Or Health and Human Services, you're doing these vaccines. How are you distributing it? What does the states need? That ground level communication between agency civil servants and an outside party, it's got to be coordinated with that GSA approval to keep it legal. By the GSA not ascertaining, even if they don't ascertain the results, but just give them the head nod, go ahead, you can't legally talk with the people you need to be talking to understand what's going on in all of these federal agencies and departments. If he gets that, then he loses hand of not having funds. Oh, Charles, I'm losing track of the funding. Yeah, the funds. I would say the funds are the least important issue here. The GSA funds, that can come later. But the big thing is the getting the security clearances for the overall national security team, which is a lot more people than just Biden. I mean, Biden's been cleared a bunch of times. Harris as a senator probably has some clearance. Those won't be hard. But if you've ever gotten a clearance in the military, it takes a while. Charles is asking. I worked on a transition team on the very tail end of a transition. So I mean, low end. When Obama took over from Bush, we had a engagement with the U.S. Army Chief of Staff, and we got called in to help with an enterprise task force that was looking at, it's called ARFRGEN. It's how regimental combat brigade teams go over and deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan, how they come back. It's a big process, so we're going in and helping with that. But we were assigned to the Chief of Staff, and part of that was assisting with the transition of the Army Secretary, who is Peter somebody at the time. His name begins with a P. And this is the important thing that I'll get into with the firings. Usually in national security, you have a continuity clause or continuity practice, probably not clause, practice, where you keep people in place for continuity so that the person coming in can pick up. And in this case, the Army Secretary was a holdover from the Bush administration who sat on behalf of the Obama administration in this. So the seat was occupied by someone who had expertise, and he kept the seat warm. You heard the phrase, keep the seat warm. Anyways, our job was largely related to ARFRGEN and stuff like that, but we got to come in. The first day I started that job, my first day at the Pentagon was actually the inauguration day. So it was funny because the DC Metro, I was on one side of the station by myself, and the other side of the station is like this wall of people, and they're all crammed in these subways, all running to get the inauguration. I'm going the other way in the Blue Line, and so I'm heading towards the Pentagon in Arlington. So I had an easy transit that day. But yeah, these transitions involve thousands and thousands of people. I can put a document up on the link of what the overview is. The overview document of this, I think, is 1,500 pages. These are very complex things, and it's because you've got a big federal government and a lot of stuff going on. But so little divergence there. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow the InfoMullet, visit us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you'd like notifications when we post new video content, click on the red subscribe button below the video. If you've ever wanted to become a mulleteer and support the InfoMullet, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate the support.